NHL Rule 5.3. Each team shall have on its bench a substitute goalkeeper who shall at all times be fully dressed and ready to play. If both goalkeepers are incapacitated, that team shall be entitled to dress and play any available goalkeeper who is eligible. The recalling of minor league goalkeepers to ensure a complete lineup shall be deemed to be an emergency recall.
Emergency backups, a tiny subset of the Goalie Guild. Civilians granted entry into the NHL through a rarely opened side door.
When did you start playing goalie?
I started when I was 37 years old.
These are men called to action as a last resort, or inaction, really, hired for a day to sit on a stool.
Actually, I was getting my hair cut at the time, believe it or not.
Did you finish the haircut?
Yeah, I did.
Lifelong goaltenders on the whole, but generally not ones who belong at this level.
Yeah, I went to Clarkson. I didn't really play much there. I did the same thing, open the door.
They were joking on the bench if they scored on that last power play that I was going in. It's all right by me just to sit and watch.
In the old days, before teams carried two goalies, an emergency backup was in the arena every night, available to play, and sometimes did. In the modern era, that hasn't happened, though one night in December of 2003, it nearly did.
Hedberg is hurt, and the backup is Chris Levesque.
Chris Levesque grew up playing hockey in Port Coquitlam, BC.
Was kind of always made the rep team, you know, did fairly well. Not well enough to get recognized, like I was undrafted. Nothing really panned out. I think I got cut from like 13 teams. After that, I was done. I was like, this is enough. I don't know if I can go through more disappointment.
Chris tried one last-ditch countrywide search for a team, and it worked. He caught on in the Manitoba Junior League, was named Rookie of the Year and an All-Star, but after 3 seasons, he left to enroll at the University of British Columbia.
While Naslund is in, another key Canuck is out. Goaltender Dan Cloutier suffered what the club is calling a minor groin strain during the morning skate.
We were panicky because we needed a goaltender, and so my staff says, well, we got a kid. The kid plays at UBC, and we can't find him.
On the morning of December 9th, 2003, UBC Thunderbirds goaltender Chris Levesque was in the library, cramming for an exam he was to write the next morning, while his teammates frantically tried to find him. Finally, they did.
One of my buddies, Casey, from the team, came in and kind of gripped me from the top of the shoulder and said, hey, you got, like, the Canucks want you to play. And I'm like, man, like, I don't have time for this. No, like, just go. So he literally grabbed both hands, pulled me out of the chair, and he says, call this number.
Levesque called, then realized that it was real. He raced to grab his gear and rushed down to the arena, signed a one-day amateur tryout contract, got his new sweater, and skated in warm-up. The newest member of the Vancouver Canucks.
That walkout of when it's like lights are down, crowds going nuts, streets have no name playing. I just kind of soaked it in. It was like, oh, cool, I got called up to the Canucks and this is happening and probably won't be able to get to play or even get close. I'll just sit there, you know. But obviously that's definitely not what happened.
With Dan Cloutier out, the lively Johan Hedberg got the start for the Canucks.
Johan Hedberg was a pretty active goaltender. He liked to get out of his crease.
Here's a chance out to challenge Hedberg. Oh, my goodness.
I went to Johan Hedberg and I said, look, we got this kid. He's a college kid. I certainly don't want to see him play, so stay in the paint.
Here comes Hedberg. Oh, my goodness. Hedberg is hurt. And the backup is a UBC goaltender named Chris Levesque.
It was an incredible collision. And immediately our heads turned to Chris and everything went just totally silent.
It's half like, oh my God, this kid's got to play, and half, I'm going to kill this Swede when I get my hands on him.
It was like the entire bench was standing up and you couldn't really see anything, right? And that's when I was straining the neck and trying to see what was going on.
And will Chris Levesque have to play tonight?
And then when the dust kind of settled, that's when I saw him laying flat out, and it was like, okay, here we go.
When he's chewing that gum like 90 miles an hour, like thinking, oh Christ, I got to go in. And we're upstairs chewing our gum saying, oh Christ, he's got to go in.
At the start of the day, I was just literally cramming for an exam. Now I'm like a second away from getting in there.
The stories he's going to be able to tell at rec league games on Wednesday night, this one's going to be a topper for everybody.
It was my wrist, so I had a fracture in my wrist. Was down for probably a couple of minutes, and the trainer was out there and said, you know what, can you do it? I don't really have a choice, do I?
And it looks like Hedberg's going to be all right.
Well, I knew I had to play through it. I didn't want to put that kid in that situation. But that would have been extremely tough for him.
Chris aced his geography exam the next morning, and the weeks that followed were a whirlwind of media. But that was as close as he ever got to the NHL.
Hey, JV, have you cut green onion yet, buddy?
I lived in the stage of what if for quite a few years after that. It wasn't in the cards for me to play. So what would it have looked like if I did go in, even if I played the minute, stopped a couple shots, like what then? Would I now be sitting here doing an interview as an NHL goalie, or would I be sitting here doing the exact same thing? I'm now in the place where if it was meant for me to make the NHL, I would have made the NHL. It's just kind of a cool Vancouver Canucks folklore sort of story now, right? That just kind of keeps living.